Scooter, it's not Dog's fan.
Welcome to Cardboard and Wine, episode 34. I'm Mamie.
I'm Josh.
I'm Carla.
And I'm Tiago.
Grab a glass, pull up a chair, and let's talk about some games.
Today on the show, we put on our wetsuits and dive into the card-playing, engine-building, ocean-exploring game, Finspan. Hey everyone, happy spring!
Yay!
It's happening.
Well, here in the Washington, D.C. area, the cherry blossoms are in full bloom. Have you all seen them?
Just the ones in the street. Like, I didn't go to the official spot yet.
I've just seen the one behind our house.
I'm looking at it right now. It's gorgeous.
We do have a nice view of a cherry blossom tree. Mamie, you saw the cherry blossom traffic
I did.
yesterday.
I got stuck in cherry blossom traffic coming back yesterday. It took me an hour and a half to get home.
Sounds lovely.
Yeah.
Sounds like you needed a glass of wine.
I definitely needed a glass of wine when I got home.
Well, we can make that happen. Tell us about this wine we have in front of us.
So we have switched up how we are procuring our wine lately, and Josh tends to be the one to stop at the wine store now that here in Maryland, you cannot buy wine in the grocery store. You have to go to the specific store that sells wine. And so Josh came home with a Sauvignon Blanc, which was surprising. We usually go red. What was in your head when you were thinking Sauvignon Blanc?
Okay, there are two reasons that I chose this wine for today. Can you all guess what they are?
I mean, is it spring? I think definitely this wine seems to go with how the temperatures have changed in the spring season.
Good guess, but no.
You wanted to change. You were bored about the red wine, probably.
I love a change, but that's not it. I'll give you a hint. It has to do with our game of the week.
Are Sauvignon Blancs produced under the sea? No, I know that's not the case.
Yeah.
They're made in, this one in particular comes from New Zealand.
Well, that is one of the reasons. So this Sauvignon Blanc and many Sauvignon Blancs come from New Zealand, the island nation of New Zealand, known for its diverse marine life.
Okay.
And also, white wine pairs well with fish.
Oh.
Some culture
I
for
get
you
that.
guys.
Mamie, why don't you tell us a little bit about Sauvignon Blanc? Because I don't think we've had one on the show before.
Yeah, I don't know if we ever have. So interestingly, Sauvignon Blanc originated in the Bordeaux region, which is what we were drinking last time, was a nice French Bordeaux. But now it has begun being commercially produced more in New Zealand, which started sort of in the 1970s. Now it's New Zealand's most widely planted variety. Because of that diverse, heat and cold in New Zealand, it actually is very good for the vines that grow the Sauvignon Blanc. It's actually 72% of New Zealand's overall wine production, 86% of the wine they export to the rest of the world.
One thing I found interesting that I learned is, Mamie, what would you say is our favorite wine?
I mean, I think Cab Sav is our favorite wine.
Well, did you know geneticists discovered that the parents of Cabernet Sauvignon are Sauvignon Blanc and Cabernet Franc? Yeah, what do you guys think? We haven't even tried it yet.
I mean, I think it's great for this spring day, right? Like it's refreshing, it's light, I don't know exactly what the right word is. Maybe tangy. But
I have a word for it.
Okay.
It's kind of tingly.
Tingly.
It's like
okay.
a little tingly. I don't know.
Is that a good thing?
Yeah, because it makes it like fun to drink. It's perfect for the season.
It's acidic. It's like citrusy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say very light, very refreshing for this warm day. I'm not mad at it. All right, I did want to take a moment to say if you want to stay in the loop with new episodes and the games we're playing, or you want to reach out to us, you can email us cardboardandwine@gmail.com, join our BGG Guild, which you can find the link in the show notes, or follow us on Instagram at Cardboard and Wine. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, the usual podcasting platforms. I recently added us on YouTube, so lots of listening options. All right, so what's everybody been playing this week?
We played a lot of times Castles of Burgundy this week.
Oh, nice.
We just revisited the game, and it's such an elegant game. We can play 2 times, and then the third time our brain's like, no, don't do that. So yeah, it was fun, right?
Yeah, Castle of Burgundy is
exciting.
very elegant and it's very smooth, flows very nicely. I love it. But the theme of that game is the perfect mechanisms. The same with Lorenzo. I think it's there's no theme, but the mechanisms are so great, and that's that suffices for me.
You don't feel like you're farming sheep or...
Nope.
But it doesn't matter.
It doesn't. I mean,
Yeah, and
it's,
you have multiple options to how to get more points, so it's very like sandboxy. And every time I play in the middle of the game, I want to start again and try the different thing. And so yeah, it's always. And then the next day I'm like, how can I play again?
yeah, it's sandboxy, but it has some tension from hate drafting. So last time we played was kind of funny because Carla got a map that required, I think, laying down eight tiles, but they had to be different, right? Yeah,
like a region of 8.
Exactly,
Yeah.
region
Score
of 8.
big
Exactly.
points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was kind of blocking Carla the whole game to make sure that, and at the end she was one short.
One short, yeah. But I wasn't paying attention as much that you were looking at
36 points.
I know.
You've scored.
You were
Yeah.
paying more attention than me, so yeah.
That's
I
a
lost
great
this
game.
one. It was a great
we'll have
game.
to play. We recently got the deluxe edition, which is that giant box up on the shelf. We'll have
I
to-
wanted that one, but it's so big.
It's so
It's
big.
a commitment.
It is a commitment.
It's definitely one of my favorite games, though, so worth it.
Totally.
We have not been playing a lot this week or the last couple of weeks, other than in preparation for this. We've been playing all the different span games. We've played Wyrmspan and Wingspan and, of course, Finspan. And one of the things that's been cool, I love that our kids are now old enough that they can play with us. And so we've been recruiting them. So we've had 4 players. This afternoon with our daughter, we played a speed game of Wingspan. I think we played in about 45 minutes with all the Europe and the Australia expansion. So really, really fun, enjoying playing those games.
Yeah, really fun.
Do your kids request playing games, or you guys requested?
We kind of have to force them, and they tend to be reluctant for like the first 5 minutes, and then they are in it. You know, it's that's typical teenager behavior. That's how they
Gotcha.
are about everything.
Well, I would say a gaming moment that stood out to me was, Mamie, you were traveling and you were out of town last weekend, and Carl and Tiago took pity upon me being home alone. And so we played some 3-player games, including one of my favorite games, the Great Zimbabwe. So it was really fun to get that one back to the table. And this was your first Splatter game. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes, very original. I've never seen a game like that, and I was intrigued.
Yeah. How many brains does a designer have? I mean, it's just, yeah, it's such a different, unique game. I love it.
I like the art too. It's very original.
Yeah, that's what I love about the Splatter game, is I feel like each one is so unique and unlike any other game you've played before. Very interactive, which you all know is a thing that I enjoy. So maybe I can convince you to play one more round after we're done recording.
Absolutely.
I'm in.
And the way you won the game was very interesting.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. You chose a god card that you've never chosen before.
That's right.
And the one that gives you 2 negative points.
A cheap one.
Yeah, cheap one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I chose the Zango God, and this is a thing I love about any game, but especially that game where there's no one path to victory. Like you figure out, well, this is really the way to win this game. And so whoever can churn this one strategy the best wins the game. But that game, every person selects an individual god that is, and I love games like that where you select your individual power that every time you read it, you're like, well, that's broken. Oh, well, that one's also broken. And so when everyone's special power is broken, it all balances out. But yeah, this is one where there was actually no special power at all, but it decreased the amount of points you needed to win the game. And I'd never tried that before, and it just so happened to work out for me this time.
And
But super fun.
It was painless to lose because the game ramp up and then it was done, right? And it was, that was so cool. And then we could play again, and yeah,
it's one of the shorter splatters. It's not super long. I think it was an hour, maybe under an hour.
Yep,
that would take.
I love it.
Yeah, I'm
super
looking
great.
forward to playing with you guys.
All right, well, is everybody ready to jump into our game of the week?
Yeah.
Finspan is the latest installment of the Span series from Stonemaier Games and a spiritual successor of the wildly popular Wingspan. In Finspan, it immerses players in marine research, tasking them with discovering and observing a diverse array of aquatic life. Designed by David Gordon and Michael O'Connell with development assistance from Elizabeth Hargrave, the creator of Wingspan, this game offers a fresh yet familiar experience for fans of the series. In Finspan, players assume the roles of marine researchers exploring the ocean's various zones: the vibrant Sunlight Zone, the mysterious Twilight Zone, and the dark Midnight Zone. Over the course of 4 weeks, which are represented by rounds, you'll embark on dives to observe fish, collect eggs, hatch young, and form schools. Each dive site specializes in a key aspect of expanding your research, and the fish you discover will provide benefits as you delve deeper into the ocean. Visually, the game boasts beautifully illustrated cards by artists Ana Maria Martinez, Catalina Martinez, and Mesa Schumacher, capturing the essence of marine life with stunning realism. These illustrations not only enhance the game's aesthetic appeal, but also provide educational insights into the diverse species featured. As a spiritual successor to Wingspan, Finspan retains some of the familiar mechanics, such as spinning resources to play cards to a personal player board that give you additional actions during the game, immediate abilities or in-game points, and also diving, which entails moving your player piece sequentially through your played cards to collect additional cards and, of course, eggs. Thematically, Finspan opts for vertical player boards to simulate diving into the depths, and eggs can be hatched into young, which can later form schools that generate increased points. We'll delve deeper into the gameplay, explore strategies for successful marine research, and compare Finspan to its predecessor Wingspan. Stay tuned as we navigate the captivating waters of Finspan. All right, everyone. It has been fun playing a lot of Finspan over the last few weeks. How did you all first hear about the game?
I first heard about the game when we arrived at the Whose Turn Is It conference in Durham this year. It wasn't released yet, and as soon as we arrived, someone just grabbed us. Hey, let's play, and then we started playing. So first contact.
You dove right in.
Yes. The first 1 minute.
Here we go.
Sorry.
Oh, I got it now.
They were fishing for players, and they caught you. Actually, I think the game was not even available for commercial release yet at that point.
No,
No, it wasn't. So that's exciting. Yeah, and I hadn't played the Wingspan before, so yeah, it was an experience.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You all had not experienced Wingspan before you played. So Finspan was your first span game.
Finspan first,
Yes.
Wyrmspan second, and hopefully
One day
Wingspan.
we'll play Wingspan.
You've not played Wingspan at all.
No.
Actually, I might be wrong, but you could be the only board gamers in existence who have played the other two, but not Wingspan.
I know. Shame.
I wouldn't be surprised, yeah.
Amazing.
I mean, I loved Wingspan when it came out, and so I was less excited about Wyrmspan just because I don't care as much about dragons. But when you mentioned that Finspan was coming out, I was instantly excited. I felt like we've got to have this. Like, we love fish. We love going to aquariums. You like fishing. We've had fish in our home before. It seemed like something that needed to be part of our collection.
Yeah, when I first heard about Finspan being released, it was an instant pre-order for me. And I would not actually say it's because I love Wingspan or Wyrmspan. I enjoy them, but they're not my favorite games. But I'm a bit of a completionist, and since I already had the other two, I feel like I'm locked in now where I had to get it. But you are right, Mamie. Of all the themes, fish are probably the thing I'm the most interested in. So I was drawn to that. I knew we had to get it.
First time I heard about Finspan was on BGG. There was a lot of backlash, memes on it, milking the cow kind of, stuff. And that intrigued me. I got to play this game and see what's going on. And yeah, I mean, there's no such thing as bad, what was it?
Bad publicity.
Exactly,
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it does make you wonder how many different spans can Stonemaier Games come out with. And there were lots of funny memes and jokes about all of the different random spans that you could have. Actually, when Wyrmspan first came out, I remember there was a popular one that had a photograph of an earthworm on the front, and the game would be all different worms.
I mean, I might like that better than dragons, let's be honest.
The dragons are cute.
They are.
They are.
But they're not real.
They're not real. But these fish are real, and they're very cool, which leads me into the components. So what do you all think about the components of Finspan?
So I think it's great. I mean, it's a Stonemaier game. It's very cool. And I like the egg and a slash young tile. I think it's very functional. You it's even thematic. You turn the tile up and becomes like a baby fish. That's kind of cool. However, since you dive into your personal tableau, it becomes like a bit of a table hog, a bit. The first time I played was like a five player game.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't have much space
Yeah.
to maneuver, to do my things. It was like sideways for me. So I think it needs table space for sure. And another thing is that some cards, they have like a column required. And sometimes I miss that. It's very subtle.
Oh, yeah, there's like a colored stripe
Exactly.
for each of the column. That's just a very tiny part of the card.
Yeah, maybe it's just me, but I missed it like 2 or 3 times.
No, that's
Yeah,
happened
same.
with everyone, and every game we've played, somebody has missed that and has been like, oh, I placed this here, but it has to be in the middle, or it has to be in the, a different column. I think could have somehow been more obvious. The other thing about that I thought was a little difficult to discern is when you get your player board, which I agree with you, Tiago, it does take up a lot of space on the table. There are fish that you already have that are built into the board, but because the background of them is the same color as the terrain, it's hard to see that they're there. I think if they had been slightly more opaque instead of as transparent, it'd be clearer that these are fish that you do have that are on the board.
Yeah, I also forgot about these fishes. The components that I like about the game, I like how the cards are multi-use. You use them as money to exchange for like placing new fishes, and you can re-fish the cards back. So that I think that was a good point in the game. But I also agree it's too big for the table and you tend to stay in your own zone, like each one in their own zone, which is fine to me. Sometimes I'm more introverted. I want to I just want to play my game here. You guys can sit by my son and play your game too. It's fun.
Yeah, there really are no cards, and we'll get into this with gameplay, but there really are no cards that require you to interact with your opponents at all.
Except for the ones where you gift your opponent something when you dive in that column.
That's true, and I'm definitely going to get to that here in just a minute. I agree. I mean, a Stonemaier game are all top-notch production quality. They definitely know how to produce a game. I wanted to say, too, that just about the cards in general, I think they are beautiful and very evocative. And I know, certainly when we play with our kids, but also I think every time I've played, there are just always these moments during the game where you draw a new card. It's like, oh, look at this one. Oh, wow, look at this one. And I think of all the Span games, this one, each of those fish are just really inherently interesting. And that's sort of a fun extra part of the game. And I will actually compare it. And I don't know that we will formally compare all the Span games. I know we've been playing a lot of all of them, so maybe we'll naturally draw comparisons. But like with Wyrmspan, once the game gets going, like the actual pictures of the dragons, though really cool, are invisible to me. I'm just looking at the gameplay relevant information, but not these fish. I don't know. They're all just super interesting, and it makes you want to read about them.
Yeah, I love reading the little facts. I mean, I felt that way about the birds in Wingspan too. But the little facts about the fish, like, it's fascinating. And I think fish especially are just so interesting, the way they like have adapted to live in different parts of the ocean. It's a learning game.
Yeah, I like it too.
One thing I do feel the need to say is, Mamie, I think we've talked about this show numerous times. I'm a sucker for upgraded components.
Yes,
and
you
so
are.
when the pre-order for this game came out, the official upgraded deluxe components also were available for pre-order. And I knew they were Stonemaier. I knew they were going to be amazing. The little eggs had even been advertised. They were just a little bit squishy, like a fish egg, little wooden fish and schools, and I could not resist. So I paid the extra money to get the official upgraded deluxe components. And I have to say, I would not normally say this, but I do not recommend them.
We don't play with them.
We don't. And
Same.
I regret purchasing them. I think they actually detract from gameplay because, as Tiago mentioned, one of the really thoughtful designs of the game is there's a mechanism in the game where you hatch eggs to young, and you simply, all the eggs have young on the back. So you just flip the egg over. With these deluxe components, they're separate components. And so you're hatching lots and lots of times through the game. And so having to actually remove the egg, and I don't know about you, but when you start to get a lot of fish, you remove the egg and then you naturally reach for the young. And then I forget, like, where did I get this egg from? And and unlike other span games, it actually does matter where the young is actually, which fish it's actually on, because of the schooling mechanism. So I have to say, we bought them, we played with them one time, and then we put them in the bag and don't use them again. And so I'd have to say, if you're considering the upgraded components, I would skip them for this game.
I feel like they could have designed a wooden tile that had the double sides, and that would have been a more useful upgraded component.
It's possible. I think with the span, it's sort of like a common theme for the span games. The eggs are some of the cooler components, like Wingspan and Wyrmspan. Those eggs are so cool. And I mean, these eggs are really cool. Like, they're very unique, but I just think the mechanism of hatching the eggs, this is the only span game that does that, just doesn't work with these components, unfortunately.
The eggs kind of make me hungry a bit. I want to eat them. If you put it in a bowl, and don't mention it's a board game component, people could just pick it up and eat it, I think.
I mean, the Wingspan ones definitely look like Easter candy. It's the time of year where you would have those sitting out on the table and want to munch on them.
That's true. We should set some out. Actually, that'd be a great Easter decoration. We could use our Wingspan and Wyrmspan components as Easter decorations. But anyway, I digress. So let's talk about the theme. We've touched on it, but what do you guys think about the theme of Finspan?
I love the theme. I think the theme is a highlight of the game for sure, because of all the fun facts about the fishes. The pictures are nice. The art is really great. And I like the theme of you are diving, so you see different species of fish from each area of the ocean. The abyssal zone, the lower fishes are the most interesting for me, because they look they're so weird and fun. So yeah, I think they had a great idea, and they used it very well for the theme.
I agree. I think the theme is probably my favorite thing about this game. I love the little diver meeple, and the fact that you're going from the higher levels down into the depths where it's dark, and the fish are appropriate that, can live in each different zone of the ocean. And I think it's very well thought out for each component and each element of gameplay to be tied into that theme. I think that's the best part of the game.
Yeah, and just to add to that, the pipeline, egg, young, and schools, to me, are very thematic. It makes so much sense, yeah.
I actually really like that mechanism that's unique to Finspan, where if you get at least 3 young in the same space, they automatically turn into a school. In my brain, I have realized, there's something satisfying about those 3 little yellow young converting into that school. And in my brain, the sound when you play the original Super Mario game, when Mario eats a mushroom and he gets bigger, that chunk, chunk, chunk. That's the sound that plays in my head every time that happens. And I actually secretly love that. Yeah, the theme is fantastic. So let's talk about the gameplay. We've touched on we've touched around the edges on gameplay, but let's dive into it. What are your thoughts on the gameplay of Finspan?
So some interesting things I took note is that the discarded cards can be recycled, which allows more planning. You don't give up completely a plan when you discard a card. You can go back to it and kind of recycle that, and so I think for long-term planning, it's a great mechanism. Another thing that I notice is that there is, when you dive to a column, and there is a bonus at the end, and that bonus kind of softly guides players to a more effective strategy, because they're incentivized to go to other columns, to dive in other columns. So that's interesting, because to play efficiently in this game, you got to take advantage from all those 3 columns and make a pipeline. And that subtle mechanism kind of guides the players to play better, I think, which I think is a very nice touch, very interesting mechanism.
And those are 2 unique aspects to Finspan versus the other span games, because I think, to my knowledge, in the other games, you certainly the similarities of you have your your available cards and you collect them into your hand. But in Wingspan and Wyrmspan, when you're choosing to play a card and discard other cards, you're basically saying goodbye to those cards for the rest of the game. And I agree with you, this mechanism of you actually never completely lose out on a card because you have your personal discard pile and that action where you can always rescue it back. So that becomes part of your strategy of, oh, well, maybe this end of game scoring card, it's expensive, it's not useful now, I'm going to go ahead and discard it, but I know I can always get it back later. That is new.
Well, and another thing that's interesting to think about is with Finspan, everything is open information. So you can see the cards that you have in your hand, the fish that you have in your hand, that you have, and that all of your opponents have in their hands. And
They're face up.
They're face up. And that's different than the other games, right? So you can sort of game out what fish they might be getting ready to play.
I like this, the open information, but for Finspan, I don't feel like I need to look at my opponents because I don't see them as opponents. I feel like I need to squeeze more points than them. The only time that I look is like when the goal is having more youngs or more schools, and then I kind of count, and then I can see like where am I in where I am in the scale. But yeah, it's very individualistic game. So. But that doesn't mean it's a bad game. It means that I still get very involved in the game. Like I feel like I dive in the game, but I don't interact with other people. So it's a good game when you're like, oh, I feel like I want to play, but I don't want to like talk too much or interact too much. So then you get into your zone there.
I like a world builder game where you sort of have your own tableau and you're creating it. And I do think that for the most part, that is the primary mechanism in the game. But it is interesting with those in-round bonuses, how you start to think, okay, are they getting ready to place this fish in the deep because that's going to be the end of round bonus? Or are they getting ready to, hatch more young because that's the in-round bonus? I think that is the only place where you start to kind of compare and compete a little bit with the other people you're playing with.
Another thing that I like about the gameplay is that it's very easy to learn. It's very welcoming to new players. So, for instance, the open information you guys mentioned, it's easier for people to ask questions. So you don't have like a hidden hand of cards. So you can just ask someone that's experienced to what does this card do, and I think it's easy. Another thing I think it's very cool. The currency is very simple. It's just eggs, cards, and young, right? It's very simple. You only spend those three things to install cards to build your engine, and that's very, very cool. You don't have a million of resources to manage. And that's very good as a gateway mechanism.
Yeah, I very much agree. And I think that is something, maybe the hallmark that in my mind sets Finspan apart from the other Span games is how streamlined it is. It's very familiar. If you've played any of the other Span games, I think you can immediately jump right in and understand the general flow of the game. But it almost feels like the goal the designers had for Finspan was think about what is the core essence of gameplay in Wingspan, and let's see how distilled down we can make this into a game. You take away the food, so the Wingspan or Wyrmspan, you're trying to collect different food to play. That's all gone here, as you mentioned. It's really
because the primary food for fish is other fish.
That is a good point. Mm-hmm. That's a good point. Maybe you could thematically say discarding cards means
exactly
they're eating other fish. But there are some new gameplay mechanisms in this game that are unique to Finspan. This is the first Span game where eggs can actually hatch. I guess Wyrmspan has the hatchlings, but the eggs themselves as an action hatch and become young. And then, as we alluded to, they become schools. And so there actually is a movement action. So these eggs hatch and become young, and actually you can move them around the board to group them together to form schools that score you even more points. And so, I actually think stripping away these additional resources that you have to collect in order to play your fish, I actually think that's a good thing. I could see how that could be seen by a gamer as like, well, that's one less layer of complexity and planning. But I don't know. I think in the other Span games, especially Wingspan, maybe we played a bit of Wingspan and Wyrmspan over the last few weeks, some of the more frustrating moments in those games are when you've got your cards and you know what you want to do, but you're stuck because that bird feeder just doesn't, because of random dice rolls, doesn't have the food you need to play any of the cards in your hand. And that's not very fun. And so this game, there's really not that boundary or barrier at all, because you're really just collecting more cards and playing those cards. And I think that's actually a positive for me.
I agree.
Yep.
All right, so we've talked about the gameplay and the theme. What are things you like about this game?
I mean, I said this earlier. I think the theme is my favorite thing about the game. I think it's beautiful and well designed, and the cards and the information about the fish is fascinating. I think the diving mechanism and the different levels of the ocean, it's just really fun and interesting. That's my favorite thing about it.
Yeah, besides the theme, I also like building my own tableau and like thinking how can I optimize it to gain more points. And I like the fact that you have so many options. It's kind of sandboxy enough that you don't get stuck. So if anything, you just get more cards, or there's always a way around things. And it's nice to see It's nice to see your tableau being filled with fish and the little like schools around and the youngs, and so it's a satisfying game.
Yeah, I like that. I like that decision-making process where you can think. And we haven't really talked a lot about it, even when we talked about gameplay mechanisms. But really, all the Span games, it really is an engine builder. You have your rows, and when you're moving that diver down, many of the cards have an action that activates when you move your diver onto that space. And so that's really something you think about. It's like, okay, do I want to place this fish that's going to give me some end of game points? Or do I want to place this fish that's going to, every time I move my diver over it, it's going to give me an extra egg or an extra hatch action? And you really have to think about that a little bit. If you ignore sort of building an engine with multiple actions, you're probably not going to fare very well. And so those are some interesting choices if you get the right cards, or if you get good cards.
I love pipelining in games in general, and this game, Finspan's pretty much all about pipelining, and I love that. Another thing I like is the recycling cards. This is something that's not very common in other games. I like that very much. And I think the goals, the round goals, are very interesting because they can throw the game into a direction that's kind of unique sometimes. I remember once we were playing and there were like the rewards, there was a reward for having young in your board. So nobody was making schools. Lots of like a too young in the same spot all over the boards. So that was a very unique. And then on the next round, everyone was making lots of schools. And so I like the round goals a lot too.
I agree. That's a very memorable play. I had made a note of that too, because you would never play that way. But that one end of round goal, the young were just building up, and no one wanted to school them. So we could, and I think many points were scored. It was like 1 or 2 points per young. And I think, Thiago, you scored a ton of points for that.
Yeah, it's interesting that game made me realize maybe that's a very cool way of building schools. I mean, because before that game, I was trying to move my young around to make schools. And now I can just, keep young in the same spot. I kind of, hatching eggs around, and then they'll be schools eventually. And wow, that round goal was very pedagogical to me to play better.
I think one thing that I like about this game, maybe even compared to other Span games, is you really can get up and going quickly. I think I mentioned not getting the right food in other Span games and not being able to play your cards is a point of frustration. But I think another point of frustration I've often had in Wingspan and Wyrmspan is sometimes, depending on the luck of those initial hand of cards you get, if you get these really big point birds at the very beginning that take like 3 or 4 different foods to play, you don't have that food, and your engine to get more food is not running very well. And so you can feel stuck while everyone else is playing maybe their cheaper cards first. But this game gets around that because there's actually 2 different types of cards. There's the giant deck of the normal fish cards, but then there are these starter fish cards, and everybody gets 2 of those. And those cards are really designed for you. Like, you can play a fish for sure, like in your first round or two, and most of them have some sort of activation action that's sort of a core part of gameplay, like get another card, get an egg, hatch an egg. And so I actually think that's something I actually learned that in the second edition of Wingspan. We have the first edition, maybe. It comes with some starter birds that you can actually use. And
I think it's smart strategy.
Yeah, I think that's something that really I enjoyed about Finspan is with those starter cards, you can really kind of prime your engine and kind of get it going so you can jump into the gameplay more effectively, and you're not going to get stuck with just a bad initial hand.
Definitely an improved design.
I think so.
I felt like in the design room, people were like obsessed about how can I make this game most accessible as possible, and that's how I feel about it.
Definitely. Well, is there anything that you don't like, though, about Finspan?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, I think it's an individualistic game and it occupies too much space in the table. So you got to have like room for all the boards. And there's a little something that I can't describe very well, is that I don't feel like I think the dopamine hits, because it's more a simple game, it doesn't give me all the dopamine hits that other games give me, like that, oh, I did that and that was like, whoa, that was a big play. And with Finspan is more like, oh, that was really pleasurable, really nice, but I don't feel like I don't feel addicted to the game and I want to play again and again, you know?
It's a lower intensity game, right?
Yes.
Like it's almost like there are several games that we play that are almost a little zen, like you can kind of, they're no stress or tension in playing. And I feel like this often feels that way. There's not that same intensity or stress, which is good on one hand, but the other hand is that you don't get that like same level of excitement when something goes really well.
Very well explained. That wasn't what I meant.
Yeah,
Thank you, Mimi.
To that end, to me, something I don't like much is the cards themselves that don't seem as interesting as like in other games. The powers are not very, flashy or like a very game breaking. It feels like more of the same. They do like the same things over and over. And I like games with powerful cards. I like to, have some, as you guys were saying, more excitement out of it. And another thing is, you guys mentioned the lack of player interaction. I usually like games with more interaction. And another thing is the third column. Sometimes I feel stuck on my pipeline to hatch eggs.
And that's the hatching and moving column.
Exactly. And the moving column is the moving part is okay, but the hatching part, sometimes I get stuck. And if I don't get the right cards, it feels a bit frustrating. That's more like a technical criticism. But when I get the right cards, it's amazing. Otherwise, it can be, how can I, pivot, maneuver without hatching much?
I think this sort of gets at the heart of my biggest criticism and thing that feels bad to me about this game, about Finspan, but also that I encounter when I play the other Span games. And that is, if you get some of the cards that really help get your engine going, that really help you generate those combos, it can be really fun to sort of run that pipeline. Like, all right, I'm going to do this, and then I get another egg, and then I'm going to hatch that, and then I'm going to do that. But if you don't get those cards, it just really does not feel fun. Mm-hmm. And it's through no fault of your own. You just happen to not get those cards. And I'll say, and again, we've played quite a few times at this point, but there was one game in particular. This game is big on some of those brown activate actions that also say everyone gets something when you activate this card. And it seems like there are more of those in Finspan. Maybe part of, again, the designers wanting to help everybody, make it as accessible as possible. Even if it's not your turn, you're going to get eggs and get hatches on other people's turns as well. But there was a game we played where I just kept drawing cards that were only actions that everybody got something. And so I really had no choice. I mean, not playing cards is not really an option either. So on my last row, I think sort of 3 of my cards were everybody gets a hatch. Everybody gets
great.
a move. Yeah. And what ended up happening on your all's turn, you were getting things that benefited you. And then on my turn, you were also getting things that benefited you. And I went back and looked and I lost that game by a ton. But it just didn't feel great because really my only choice was to take the action. So I don't know that those felt super balanced to me.
I mean, it's fun to play with you because you always use these cards.
And now I avoid them because I have that memory. And I know those fish are worth a few extra points because of that, but I don't think it's offset.
I completely agree. I think the interaction is so positive that it gets negative.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well said. Well said. So how heavy is this game? I mean, I think I know where we're going to land on this because we've talked a lot about Finspan really seeming like the goal here was accessibility to the max. So that seems like that was a design goal. But what are folks' thoughts? And again, on the utilizing the board game geek scale, where 1 is a light game and 5 is a heavy game, where does this fall for you?
I'm in between 1 and 2 because it could be a 1 because it's very easy to learn and the iconography is simple. But 2 because sometimes you might miss something, like where to you're not allowed to put this fish in this column, so you have to be like alert and awake all the time. So that's why I would say like a 2.
Yeah, I think this is 2. Sometimes I'm like between 2 and a 3. I think there is some important decision making, that makes it a little heavier to me than like a 1, but it's definitely not a heavy game. It's pretty easy to learn. Our kids picked it up really quickly. Especially I think if you have any familiarity with the other games, you can pick it up very quickly. And there's not a lot of information to learn. And a great thing, as Tiago mentioned, is because it is all open information, even if there is an ability on the card that you're not sure about, you can just ask and look it up. There's no reason to, not know and not understand.
Yeah, I agree. It's number 2 to me. It's very accessible, as we all discussed. And I'm glad it exists because engine building is perhaps my favorite kind of game. And if I had friends over that are non-gamers, I think Finspan is like a superb introduction to engine building, tableau building, and yeah, that would be the only game if I buy it. It would be the only game in my collection that I could do it with friends, and yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would be a 3, maybe if you had those friends who were brand new to sort of strategy games, engine building games, but especially if you've played games and if you've played Wingspan before, I think this is easily a 2. You can jump right in. Is it fun? Do you have fun playing Finspan?
It's definitely fun. It's not fun.
Compared to going to the dentist.
Well, compared to some of the other things we play sometimes that feel a little brutal. Like
okay.
It doesn't have that.
Compared to the games Josh likes.
Exactly. No, it's definitely fun. I mean, I think, again, if we're using 1 to 5, I think it's a 3 fun, right? It's a 3. It's kind of in the middle. There are things about it I really enjoy, but it's not the most fun game because it doesn't have that same intensity and excitement.
Yeah, I'm with Mamie. Yep.
Yeah, me too. I agree. It's fun. It's like you're playing like some art. So it feels to me like very introspective, artistic, and beautiful game. So in that sense, it's fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's very pleasant. And I think if we had like 45 minutes to an hour and we didn't really want to think too much, but wanted just a fun gaming experience. I also I'm not like that mad if I lose. Like I don't feel super invested. Like it's just pleasant to build your engine, play your fish, see what you create. But yeah, I would say it's fun. I wouldn't want to play it every week in and week out, but it has a place, I think. How replayable is Finspan?
That's a great question. I mean, I played 5 or 6 times, so I don't have much. I mean, I'm not certain on this, but I would say it's kind of a moderate replayable because of the round goals, which, as I said before, it shows the game into different directions. And it's a large deck of cards. The cards are not very different from each other. Not sure if I'm being fair here, but it's still large deck of cards. So yeah, I think it's moderate. It's a moderate replayable.
Yeah, I would say those round goals are really what, for me, help help it to be more replayable. Like you mentioned, Tiago, I think that one game was very different than some of the other games just because of that one round goal we had. So I think not only, we mentioned the game plays over 4 rounds, but it's not only which round goals do you happen to have for that game, but also the order they come out. So like if you had like a scoring condition about schools that happened to be in the first round, that would be a very different feel than if that was in the last round. And so I think the way that focuses your play differently adds a little bit of variability. I'll also say the other night we played with our family and our daughter completely ignored schools. She did 0 schools and she won the game. And to me, that actually kind of boosted it in my mind with regard to replayability. She decided she was going to focus completely on the big, high value, high point fish and not even worry about schools at all. And there happened to be some end of round goals that were about predator tags, which tend to be the bigger fish. And, you know, Mamie and I were focusing on schools like normal, among other things, and she
Didn't
won.
work.
So
Yeah.
I kind of enjoy that in any game where a new strategy emerges to win the game that's not sort of the meta of the way you thought was a successful way to play the game. What about player count? So we've played a few different player counts. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, we played with 2 and 4 players, and I don't see a lot of difference, to be honest. So that's a good, and also a point for the game, because I think it's positive. You can play like 2 to 5 players and it won't affect the game at all. Except like if most of players are like Josh that use the cards that benefit everyone, then that would be a party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I prefer 2 players because, I mean, it scales well. It works well at any player count, so there's not like a limitation. But if I had to choose, I would choose 2 players because adding more players don't add interesting interaction. I think it doesn't add new nuances to the game. Maybe I'm oversimplifying because I only played 5-6 times. So, but from my plays, it feels like adding more players don't add much interesting interaction.
I agree with you, Tiago. I feel like there's not more complexity with more players. There's not more interaction with more players. It just means it's longer until it's my next turn. And because it's not a real heavy game, there's not a lot of, I don't need more think time between turns. And so even when we were playing with our kids, it was really funny. Like I could tell they would get bored when they were waiting for their next turn. I mean, our son will get up and bounce a basketball because he's like bored waiting for his next turn. And so with 2 players, you just go back and forth and it's a quicker game.
It's so quick at 2 players, right?
Yeah.
And I'll say it's a very real consideration. And maybe we have a pretty decent sized gaming table, but I actually can't imagine fitting 5 people on our table the way those vertical boards
I
are.
don't think
Even with 4,
We'd have to put the leaf in and expand the table.
We really have to offset the boards in a weird way that I don't think we have to with any other game that we own. So I think that's a consideration. If you have a small table at home, 4 players is actually going to be pretty challenging to fit everything on the table. All right, so I think we talked about this a little bit, but when would you break this game out? I think we covered this. Really, this is a very new player friendly. We talk a lot about gateway games to introduce new players to the hobby. And I actually met some people recently who only play Wingspan. They are not board game hobby people, but Wingspan itself became really a popular mainstream game. And there are players who only play Wingspan. And I could imagine if they hear about Finspan, this would be a natural pickup for them. And I imagine they will enjoy it. But this is definitely a game I'd consider if we had some people interested in games, but had not played a lot of games. This would probably be one of the top games I would reach for.
Yeah, the Spans series is it's very common. Like even all of our known player friends, they have Wingspan, and I can see that like how good this game it is for new players too. So yeah.
All right. Well, we have talked a lot about Finspan, so let's get into our final ratings. Mamie, why don't you tell us a little bit about our Cardboard and Wine rating scale?
Yeah, here at Cardboard and Wine, we use the rating scale for our games similar to how we rate our wine. A 1 is an empty bottle. It's sad and disappointing. It needs to just be thrown away. A 2 is like a nice $2 chuck. If you don't have anything else to drink, it would do. A 3 is a wine in a box. There are things about it that we really enjoy, but things we don't love. A 4 is like this nice New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. It's easy to enjoy. You can enjoy it regularly. You've poured a glass. You're looking forward to enjoying more. And a 5 is like that big, bold Cabernet Sauvignon that's going to only get better with age.
All right, final thoughts and ratings.
I would rate a 3. It's a type of game that I like. Angel Builders, a beautiful game as well. Easy to teach, easy to learn. But a 3 because I missed the dopamine hit. I missed the thing that makes me want to play again the next day.
Yeah, I'm totally with Carla. It's a 3 for me too. A wine in the box. It serves its purpose of being a great getaway game. So I can imagine myself inviting friends over and play Finspan as an introductory game. But I mean, when I have Race for the Galaxy at home, when I have First State at home and other engine builders, I'll definitely go for those when it's just Carla and I. So yeah, it's a 3 for me. It's a very functional game. I'm glad it exists. But for my tastes, I prefer other games in that genre.
I totally agree. It's a 3 for me too. I love the theme. I love the fish. I love learning about the fish. I think the cards are pretty, but there are definitely things that are missing from it that prevent it from being something I want to keep getting to the table over and over again.
Yeah, I am right in line with you all. We're schooling together in our schools here. This is a definite 3 for me. I'm happy to play it, and I've had a pretty good time playing it for what it is. I think it's great. I'll say for my taste, none of the Span games really connect with me, so I guess I should say that. I think I agree with what's been said. They're all games, and Finspan among them are games I'm happy to play. Like if someone else says, let's play Finspan or let's play Wingspan, I'm down. I'll play it, but I'm never excited to play them. I think it does give Wingspan feel in a quick streamlined package. And maybe one of the biggest things it has going for it for me, even of the other games, we won't really get into this. I don't even know if I would say it's my favorite Span game. It might be, but I love the fish. The fish theme of all the Span games is my favorite. I might be happy if a new expansion for Finspan came out. I would probably get it, especially if it added just a slight extra layer of strategic options or end-of-round scoring. I think it would take a pleasant game and make it just a little bit better. But yeah, I think it's right in the middle, a 3, and it sounds like we're all pretty aligned on that. So this has been a great discussion of Finspan. Mamie, why don't you take us out of here?
Thanks for listening to Cardboard and Wine. For show notes, links, and other fun info about the games we discuss on the show, you can visit our website at cardboardandwine.com.
If you have feedback on the show or suggestions for a future show, you can email us cardboardandwine@gmail.com or jump into our guild on Board Game Geek.
See photos of the games we play on Instagram at Cardboard and Wine, or you can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. We'd love to hear from you, and it will help new listeners find the show.
Until next time,
cheers and happy gaming!
All right, Mamie, putting you on the spot, rank the Span games, least favorite to most favorite.
Oh, okay. This is tricky because Wingspan would have been my least favorite, but with the expansions, I like it better. I still think Wingspan is least, Finspan is in the middle, and Wyrmspan is at the top.
Wow.
And it's hard because I love the theme of Wingspan and Finspan better, but Wyrmspan is more fun to play.
All right, I'm going to surprise you. I'm going to say Wyrmspan last.
Interesting.
I think it's a little more complex, but I think it overstays its welcome. We played the other night, and you can get more actions, and I got to the point, I feel like every time I play that game, I'm like, I have some more actions to do, but I don't really want to do anything, except stop playing. I would say I would have put Finspan at the top. Until you're right, we played with the expansions on Wingspan, and I think they fixed some of the things I don't like. So I'm going to still say Wingspan number 1, Finspan number 2, Wyrmspan last.